Alright everybody, welcome back. This week I'm going to be going over Titania, Protector of Argoth. So she's a 5/3 and it says, when Titania, Protector of Argoth enters the battlefield, return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Whenever a land you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a 5/3 green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. So Titania is a, first of all, I built this deck as, it's kind of a tribute deck to Uriah over at CMDR Decks, as he's not doing deck techs anymore. But he did this deck a couple of years ago, and I immediately fell in love with it. I thought it was an amazing, amazing idea, and so I built the deck. And it was needing some updates, and this seemed like a good time to go ahead and work on this deck. So the whole idea behind this deck is that you're basically sacking land to make creatures to beat your opponents. And you're ramping hard so that the more land you can get in play, the more stuff you can do. So I have lands in the non-basics that are going to basically either blow up lands, or they sack themselves, or they sack other lands. And all of that goes into creature generation for Titania. So anyway, we're going to jump into the deck now, and I'm going to go ahead and show this to you. So that was Titania. So I have 21 snow-covered forests here. And then I have scrying sheets, so I can pay 1 in a snow from the snow-covered land to look at the top card of my library. If that card is snow, so if it's a snow-covered land, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. So this is great because it's going to allow us to get a little tempo with getting some extra cards off the top of our deck, potentially, with all the snow-covered forests that I have, the 21 that I have. All right, Scoured Ruins enters the battlefield. I have to sacrifice 2 untapped lands, which means make a couple of creatures with Titania out, and then I can add 4 colorless mana to your to the mana pool. So that seems pretty good. Lotus Veil, same idea, only 3 colored mana. Then we have Heart of Yavimaya. So Heart of Yavimaya, basically, I have to sacrifice a forest when it enters the battlefield, and then, or it sacrifices itself. So if I wanted, I could just let it drop through and sacrifice itself, just to get the 5/3 creature if I wanted. But if I want to leave it on the battlefield, it does make green mana, and then a creature I control can get +1/+1 to the end of the turn if I do that bottom ability. Glacial Chasm is cumulative upkeep. I have to pay 2 life. I may never even do that with this card because I have so much recursion in here. But when it enters the battlefield, I have to sacrifice a land, so I get to make a creature, and then creatures I control can attack. So it's going to slow down the game, and then it's going to prevent all damage, not just combat damage, but all damage that would be dealt to me. So this is a very good card in the respect that it's going to give me some time to go ahead and rebuild board state, or whatever I need to do to keep people from attacking me until I can get back on my feet. And it's easily recurable. And then I have this one, so I can sacrifice it to add 2 colorless mana to my mana pool, or it taps for 1 colorless. And Petrified Field, sacrifice Petrified Field, and I get to return land from my graveyard to my hand. So that seems pretty good. Pick a creature. All right, let's see what else we got here. I need to move my camera just a touch. Alright, we have Terramorphic Expanse. Sacrifices, make it a creature and gets us a land. Evolving Wilds. Wood Foothills, same ideas as the Terramorphic Expanses, just for the forest coming in untapped. Misty Rainforest. Windswept Heath. And Verdant Catacombs. Alright, I do love the panoramas for this deck, actually, because it allows me to use mana right away, and then once Titania gets into play, then I can sacrifice, make a creature, and go get a forest and put it into play tapped. Bant Panorama, Naya Panorama, and then we have Blighted Woodlands, so sacrifice and go get 2 forests and put them into play tapped. Myriad Landscapes, same idea for 2 mana. Strip Mine is going to allow us to either blow up our own lands to get more creatures, or we can blow up opponents' lands to, you know, those Maze of Iths or whatever. Wasteland, same idea. Ghost Quarter, same idea. My land or their land. Tech Edge, same idea. Alright, and then Dust Bowl is actually nice because it's going to be an outlet that I can sacrifice lands. So I could choose to sacrifice forests to blow up lands if I needed to. Alright, let's get into these green cards here. So, Skyshroud Ranger is, you may put a land card from your hand into play. And I can only do it at sorcery speed, but I get an additional land drop, so that's pretty good. Exploration, you may play an additional land on each of your turns. This guy's going to allow us to play an additional land, and then once we get the City's Blessing, he's a 5/5 for 3, so that seems pretty good. So I'm getting additional land drops, and he's a 5/5 for 3. And I'm almost certainly going to get the City's Blessing. This is Commander. And then we have Azusa, Lost But Seeking, so I can play 2 additional lands on each of my turns. Oracle of Mul Daya is going to allow me to play an additional land, and I can play lands off the top of my library. Summer Bloom, 3 additional lands per turn. Or that turn, I guess. Rites of Flourishing. So if I have some of these other cards out in play, I may not end up playing this one unless I like really needed the card draw. But this does allow each player to draw an additional card per turn, and each player to play an additional land per turn. So it's not the best thing for me to have on the field, but it's huggy, so it might stay around for a while. I don't know. I haven't really gotten a chance to play it too much yet to see if I really like it or not. All right, Journey of Discovery. This is a real flexible card in that I can either search my library for 2 basic lands and put them into my hand, or I can play 2 additional lands on a turn, or I can pay the entwined cost and do both. The last game that I played in, I found myself using the second mode a lot, where I was just playing additional lands. In a different game, I found myself using the top mode. So it's whatever ends up coming up, you know. All right. And Courser of Kruphix is going to allow me to gain life every time a land comes into play, and I can play lands off the top of my library. This is not additional land drops. It doesn't do that. Boo. All right, and Harrow is going to allow me to sacrifice a land, make a creature, and then I get to go get 2 basic lands and put them into play straight up. Not tapped. Soul Ring is going to add 2 to my mana pool. Cultivate is going to go let me search for 2 lands, put 1 into my hand and 1 onto the battlefield tapped. So we're in the land brand packages now. Kodama's Reach, same idea. This is Nissa, Vastwood, Seer. And Nissa says that when she enters the battlefield, I get to search my library for a forest and put it into my hand. And then whenever a land enters the battlefield, there's a little check that's going to happen. And if I have 7 or more, she flips. And the only mode that I really care about on the back of here is this top one, where I can look at the top card of my library, and if it's land, I get to put it in my hand, or put it on the battlefield, actually. And then otherwise, if it's not, then I just put it into my hand. So it's card draw / ramp. Pretty good. All right, Yavimaya Elder. Yavimaya Elder is going to let us, so we can pay 2 down here and sacrifice him. Then we would go and search for our 2 basic lands and put them into our hand. And then after that, after I shuffle my library, I get to draw a card. And I thought it was a good card for the deck. I got a lot of additional land plays, so it should work out. This one is Groin Rites of Itlamok. And so when it enters the battlefield, I get to look at the top 4 cards in my library and put a creature card from there into my hand. and then I put those on the bottom of the library, and then at the beginning of my end step, if I have 4 more creatures, I get a Gaia's Cradle, and I am gonna have 4 more creatures. So this is really nice. I wish I had a Gaia's Cradle. I just don't have the money for it. I don't. But for this one here, I mean, it taps for green or it does the Gaia's Cradle, which is amazing. So good card. All right, let's keep going here. With this card, I was just thinking that I really only care about this bottom mode down here. So I discard this and sack a land, make a creature, and then I get to draw a card, all for free. Seems pretty good. Edge of Autumn. Greater Good is going to allow me to sacrifice creatures, so if a board wipe happens, I could go ahead and start sacrificing those creatures to dig deeper into my deck and fill up my hand. Yes, I have to discard 3 cards with each creature that's destroyed. Most of the creatures in the deck are 5/3, so no big deal. Alright, Shamanic Revelation. I get to draw a card for each creature I control, and then I gain 4 life for each creature I control with power 4 or greater. Well, pretty much every creature in here is power 4 or greater. Almost all of them, except for some of the support creatures. Tireless Tracker. Whenever a land comes in, I get to investigate, and then I can break clues to draw cards, and whenever I break a clue, he just gets bigger, so he turns into a bigger beater every time I crack a clue. Sylvan Library is just going to allow us to additional draw 2 cards on our draw phase, and then I can either choose to put those cards back, or I can keep them and take the damage, but yeah, great card. Elemental Bond. Most of the creatures are over 3 power, so I'm going to get to draw a card every time a creature comes in. Sack a land, draw a card. That's what that says. Same idea with Garruk's Packleader. Horn of Greed. So this says whenever a player plays a land, that player draws a card. So what constitutes playing a land? Well, each player gets 1 land play per turn. The only way that you get other land plays per turn is to have a card that allows you to play additional lands per turn. So Cultivate doesn't allow you to play an additional land per turn. So I'm going to get a lot more card draw out of this than my opponents are, which is really good for me. It's going to give me a lot of tempo, and I think that's why it really deserves a spot in this deck, because I'm doing a lot of ramping land into my hand and then being able to play additional lands with Azusa and stuff. Alright, Garruk Wildspeaker, untap 2 target lands. I could put a 3/3 beast creature into play with Elemental Bond. That means I get to draw a card. And then I got this trample activation down here, which is pretty easy to get to. Alright, coming into trample cards here. So this is Thunderfoot Baloth. I wanted to try and get some interesting trample cards in here, not the Crater Hoof Behemoths and the Overrun and the Overwhelming Stampede. I wanted something a little different. So this guy, when he's in play, as long as I have my commander, all my creatures get +2/+2 and trample. Seems good. Dragon Throne of Tarkir. So I can equip this to a creature, and then I can pay 2, and other creatures you control gain trample and XX until the end of the turn, where X is that creature's power. So that goes right on there as soon as it resolves. The ability resolves, and then I can move it over to another creature and do it again if I want to, and I could get some really, really big creatures pretty fast with trample. Barrow-Fisted Krosa. I have tons of land recursion in here, and I have tons of way to play lots of land. So when a forest comes into play, all my creatures get 1/1 and gain trample until the end of the turn. This bottom part doesn't even matter. Rampaging Baloths. Every time a land comes into play, I'm going to get a 4/4 green beast, which is so much synergy with the deck, with all the extra land playing and the cards that allow me to draw cards for creatures power 3 and greater. It's pretty good. Arachnogenesis. So I was a little worried about having no flying protection really in this deck, so this is a way to make a bunch of spiders real quick, and then it prevents all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by non-spider creatures. So somebody attacks me with all their flyers, I play this, I can't be dealt damage that turn, I get a bunch of blockers that actually deal damage, and I could stack them all on something that I really want to kill if I wanted to go that route. Pretty good. Second harvest, sure, I'll take a card in here that allows me to double all my tokens in play. So that seems pretty good. I like to say that a lot, don't I? Concordant Crossroads. This is going to give everybody on the table haste. That is good and it's bad. The point here is that if you were breaking a bunch of creatures and you wanted to go in and attack, you play this after you get all your creatures in play, and then you play this, everything has haste, and then you attack. And we're making lots and lots of tokens. This isn't going to be as beneficial for the other players. All right. Heroic Intervention. This is some protection here. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of the turn. Amazing card. Krosa and Grip. It's got split second, so I can destroy an artifact or enchantment. Thrashing Brontodon. It's going to trigger on that 3 power, draw a card. And I can blow it up to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Bane of Progress. This is going to blow up all artifacts and enchantments. So I got to be a little careful, but it makes a big thing. Frailes. This is it's ramp, destroy artifacts or enchantments, and it's card draw. Perfect for the deck. This one, when I cast it, I can exile an artifact, enchantment, or a land. And then the recursion down here is pay 3, sacrifice a land, and it comes back to my hand. So it fits on theme with the deck. And these are our sack outlets back here towards the back. Claws of Gix comes in for 0, and then I can pay 1 to sacrifice a permanent. Maybe I want to sacrifice a bunch of lands to make a bunch of tokens, and then put a Concordant Crossroads in play. Maybe a board wipe is happening, and I just want to gain a bunch of life with those creatures that are dying. Zuran Orb is going to allow us to, it comes in for 0, and then I could sacrifice a land to gain 2 life. And then Escape Shift is just amazing for this deck because it's going to let me go get any lands out of my deck and put them into play. So, and it's going to make a ton of creatures. Natural Balance. This card is awesome, and it's so each player controlling 4 or fewer lands may search his or her library for enough basic land to bring his land total to 5 and put those lands into play. Those players shuffle their libraries afterwards. The part that I really like here is each player controlling 6 or more lands sacrifices enough lands to reduce his or her land total by 5, or to 5. So it makes a ton of creatures for me, and it gets those blue players. It gets those blue players out of the Cyclonic Rift range. All right, my dog has just come into the camera here. So then we have a Spitting Spider. So he costs 5. He has reach, and I can sacrifice a land to deal 1 damage to each creature with flying. And he's a 3/5. And then Sunstone. I can sacrifice a snow-covered land. To fog, basically. I can sacrifice a snow-covered land to fog. And then Sylvan Safekeeper, I can sacrifice the land to give something Shroud until the end of the turn. Constant Mists, I can pay 2 and sacrifice the land, and it comes back to my hand, and creatures deal no combat damage this turn, so this is nice fog on reoccurring fog there. And then let's get into my recursion. Crucible of Worlds, I can play land cards from my graveyard. Ramunap Excavator, same idea. Light from the Loam, I can return 3 land cards from my graveyard to my hand, and then I can dredge 3. So instead of drawing a card, I can peel off 3 cards off the top of my library, put this back in my hand, get some more land out of my graveyard. Seems pretty good. Splendid Reclamation, return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So with something like Baru Fist of Krosa, all those forests that I may have sacked, now all my creatures are super duper powered up. Alright, and World Shaper, when it dies, put all land cards from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. Sounds good. Praetor's Council, so I can return all my cards from my graveyard to my hand, and then I have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game, so that seems pretty good. And this is recursion here. This is, I get recursion when it enters the battlefield, and I get recursion when it dies. And it's a 5/4. Nissa Vital Force is untap target land you control. So this is basically, could be ramped, makes a creature. It also returns permanents from the graveyard to my hand, and it turns into card draw pretty easily with -6, and I'm already at 5 loyalty. And then the last but not least is E-Witness, and I can basically return anything from my graveyard to my hand. So anyway, that's my deck this week. I really appreciate you guys, and I may be taking this next week off. I haven't decided yet for sure. I have some other things that I need to do. I got some responsibilities to take care of. But anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe and favorite. And if you guys have any deck ideas that you would like to share, please message me, and I'll see if I can get them up on my page. All right, have a nice day. Bye.